Mario Kart World is the first proper Mario Kart entry in over 11 years, and with that much of a wait, they'd have to change a lot of stuff to make the wait feel more worth it. Every track takes place in a giant interconnected world, meaning you can race around just in the open world, or you can race in between tracks. There's a lot of creativity there. The overall mobility is increased, letting you grind on rails and ride on walls, making this the most technical Mario Kart game ever. And you can play as a cow. That's a pretty important note. By far, the craziest part of this new Mario Kart game is the soundtrack. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy to say the best part of Mario Kart is the soundtrack of the music, but it's true. Not only are there amazing themes for each individual track, but there's also hundreds of rearrangements of past Mario Kart tracks and even past Mario songs in general that aren't even from Mario Kart. This means the game has an overall set list of over 300 tracks in a Mario Kart game. But I want to focus on one specific aspect of the game's soundtrack. It's diversity. Not just the diversity in the genres, but also the diversity in all the different cultures that it's representing. After all, this is Mario Kart World. Obviously, we're going to want to see some world representation here. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go through the entire Mario Kart World soundtrack and point out all the different notes of diversity that I was able to pick up. But before we get to that, we need to go all the way back to the beginning of Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart released on the SNES, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, in 1992. Super Mario Kart wasn't just a genre definer, it was basically a genre inventor, because there hadn't been any racing games out there that hadn't focused on a less rigid steering system and items to shake up gameplay. In terms of music, it's kind of limited due to the limitations of the SNES sound chip, but the general music formula defined by Super Mario Kart was that most of the songs were very catchy, quick-paced, snappy, and upbeat. This is the formula for most of the Mario Kart games, pretty much up until Mario Kart 8. Released in 2014 for the Wii U, this game sought out to completely evolve what Mario Kart was. It featured more realistically detailed courses, it had anti-gravity so that course designs could go farther than what they ever could have been before. But the most notable part was its music. Mario Kart 8's soundtrack could be best described as taking the pre-existing Mario Kart formula and fusing it with a mixture of jazz and rock. It was a very bold approach, especially since Mario Kart music has always just been considered as something you would listen to in the background and not much else. However, since 2014, we haven't had any proper Mario Kart entries aside from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is just a port, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which is just basically a toy, and Mario Kart Tour, which is the mobile game. I don't like Tour very much. 11 years later, when all hope felt lost, along comes Mario Kart World. Like I've said before, the soundtrack is amazing, but how am I supposed to cover all of it with just how many tracks there are? Well, I decided to do the only thing I felt was right, by listening to the entire soundtrack over several sittings. Yeah, admittedly I did do this mostly for myself, but I also learned a lot of things about Mario Kart World's diversity, not just in its music, but also in its world building and many other aspects. So without further ado, I present the diversity of Mario Kart World's music. There's so many tracks in this game for me to mention them all, so I'm just going to go through all of the things that stuck out to me while listening to it. Let's start off by just covering the songs for the main tracks before we get into the many rearrangements in this game. This game's soundtrack maintained the jazz rock fusion that Mario Kart 8 pioneered, but with its own twist added. Mario Kart World seems to go for a road trip style, as you can gather from the visuals and the music. The first track, Mario Bros. Circuit, along with many others, incorporates a harmonica, which is often associated with the desert. But why is the harmonica associated with the desert? Where did that come from? Well, after doing some research, I found out that it was mostly about money. The harmonica is a very cheap instrument since you can only play a few set chords unless you really know what you're doing, and was seen as the ideal instrument for those who couldn't afford anything grander, not to mention its small size making it super portable. This sentiment of the harmonica carries over to the trope of the cowboy standing in the desert with nothing else to do but just play his trusty harmonica. Next up is Crown City, a sprawling city, and its standout feature in the music is the talk box that they used, which is something that I never thought a Mario Kart game would ever use in its soundtrack. Then there's Whistle Stop Summit, a track that goes around the mountain alongside a train, and the music features lots of instruments such as a fiddle, flute, and even a choir. It's hard for me to pinpoint the exact cultural influence, but my guess is that it's kind of like Irish, I guess. And finally, rounding off the first 4 tracks, we have DK Spaceport, which is a big reference to Donkey Kong, you know, the first game that featured Mario and Donkey Kong and Pauline. And my god, they did not miss with this one. I'll be saying that a lot. The track has you climbing up these straight paths one after the other, and as you go along each path, the music slowly builds up more and more, getting more and more tense, climatic, and jazzy. And the whole time it has like the Donkey Kong riff playing in the background, so how can you not love that? This game isn't entirely new tracks, as there's also a lot of representation and older tracks in the game, although they don't really tell you that directly. Desert Hills, originally from Mario Kart DS, got a huge glow up. Initially it was seemingly based off of like the desert style courses that you'd see in a Mario game, but in Mario Kart World it's more realistic and based off of like an actual desert. There's some ancient ruins across the track, these guys running around, and the music features some interesting percussion that's more realistic to how desert music would sound like. It's worth noting that music itself has different definitions all around the world, as our standard definition of music, having a set structure with like verses and choruses, would be different to other areas. They break down the definition of music itself and then build it back up in their own way, and I find that really interesting, how Mario Kart World's music sometimes tries to capture that while staying in the own structure that we have. And as you can hear in Desert Hills, the percussion doesn't feature the kicks and snares that we would come to expect, even though the older track did somewhat have that kind of. And it's also like that in the next track, Shy Guy Bazaar from Mario Kart 7. This track takes place around an Arabian-esque bazaar, and even features a palace with Daisy's emblem. After all, Daisy herself is a princess from her own kingdom of Sarasaland, but we'll get into all this world building stuff and details later. Not all the music focuses on being perfectly culturally accurate, as Koopa Troopa Beach from Super Mario Kart is instead set on like a beach party, and the music is like techno-electronic, and I don't think we've ever seen any Turtles like party before. I know we're not supposed to cover the rearrangements yet, but I do want to point out something interesting. Although the rearrangements just shuffle around and free roam and play randomly in the intermission tracks, it does depend based on the location and the time of day. So if you're racing from Koopa Troopa Beach to another track, then you'll likely hear Baby Park from Mario Kart Double Dash being played in dubstep. Peach Beach, also from Double Dash, features steel drums and a slide guitar, which are instruments often associated with like the beach side. And Dino Dino Jungle, also from Double Dash, has seen a crazy overhaul. The song used to be more adjacent to a jungle track, but now it has a bunch more rock stuff like metal guitars. Back to the new tracks, Faraway Oasis takes place on a savanna, with a bunch of animals roaming around, a big waterfall, and the music has a really fun percussion mix. I also love how, although the song has instruments you associate with like a savanna area, such as a flute, it also has stuff that you probably wouldn't hear there, like the electric guitar. And I think that's what makes this rock jazz fusion interesting, is that it's put in places where you normally wouldn't hear it at all, and it just makes it so much more engaging. There's Salty Salty Speedway, a track that takes place in some Venetian canals with Italian music that features instruments like the accordion. And then there's Cheep Cheep Falls, obviously inspired by Japan, using some classic Japanese instruments such as the shamisen, as well as having a very tense pre-chorus. But the Japanese influence is also represented in the landscape in the general track as well. Now I'd like to mention how the diversity goes beyond the music and track design, as in free roam you can explore every nook and cranny around the tracks and even outside of them. You can pick up some Japanese foods such as takoyaki, and if you have the right character and you eat it, you can even transform into some Japanese inspired outfits such as happy or masuri. Going back to Shy Guy Bazaar, it's here where you can pick up some food that transforms Daisy into an Oasis outfit, as well as Luigi. We all love a man who's supportive of their girlfriend's culture. For the final few main tracks I'll be covering, we have Dry Bones Burnout, with the whole track being themed around Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. As you may already know, Day of the Dead is a typically Mexican tradition celebrating the lives of those who have passed. The track is beautifully decorated with candy skulls and colorful tapestries everywhere, and music also features some patterns and instruments that you'd hear in salsa music. And finally, there's the infamous staple of every Mario Kart game, Rainbow Road. I don't think this track has any cultural significance outside of gamer culture, but it's the most beautiful Rainbow Road track I've ever seen, and it honestly makes me cry every time I listen to it. Now it's time to get into the real meat and potatoes of the soundtrack, all the rearrangements in the game. These songs don't play in a specific part of the game, rather they just get shuffled around in intermissions of free roam, again depending on location and time of day. But since some of these songs can play in the free roam mode where there isn't any high octane races happening, that means that a lot of these songs can be a little bit more relaxed and deviate from the standard Mario Kart formula. And I'd also like to point out that every single one of these rearrangements has a sick as hell solo in the middle. Every single one. What were they feeding these composers?
Now you must acquire a taste for freeform jazz.
I'm gonna bounce around a lot, but for now let's just start off with the Super Mario Kart rearrangements. They're nothing too notable, but something that I did notice between all of them is that they have sort of a Latin music style. This seems peculiar for a Mario game of all things to have, so I did a little bit of research and found some interviews with Koji Kondo, the original Mario composer, from 2001 and 2010. Kondo noted that when he first made the original ground theme for Super Mario Bros., many people pointed out that it sounded somewhat Latin in style, which he wasn't originally going for. He just wanted to make a bouncy theme that would follow the rhythms of the player, even though he did note that he was fond of Latin music for how bouncy it was. So for Super Mario Bros. 3, he decided to go directly away from Latin music and instead went for something more like reggae, which in hindsight he noted wasn't the best idea since reggae music doesn't exactly follow the rhythms of Mario platforming. This Latin style is captured in a lot more of these rearrangements of older tracks, such as Mushroom Gorge, my favorite course in Mario Kart World, Bob-omb Battlefield from Super Mario 64, and of course, the ground theme from Super Mario Bros. And the underground theme from Super Mario Bros. Or should I say one of the underground themes from Super Mario Bros. Because yes, some of these songs have multiple covers in Mario Kart World. And with the underground theme, it has another cover that goes the entirely opposite way and just has an insanely crazy drum break.
Don't slow down. Pick it up!
And again, with a lot of the rearrangements in the first few Mario Bros. Games, they're covered in an incredibly diverse number of ways. The ground theme from Super Mario Bros. 2 is in the style of a big band. The player select theme from Super Mario Bros. 2 is sort of Dixieland. The ground theme from Super Mario Bros. 3 is reggae style and similar to the original theme. And the athletic theme for Super Mario Bros. 3 is in ska. Ska music in a Mario Kart game. With Mario Kart 8 mixing rock and jazz into the music formula, obviously there would be a lot of opportunities for the jazz part to shine. This is the case with many of these tracks, such as Peach Gardens from Mario Kart DS, Coconut Mall from Mario Kart Wii in a boisterous big band style, and my personal favorite, Maple Tree Away, which is also from Mario Kart Wii. This sounds like something that I could play at a family gathering where my relatives who haven't touched a Mario Kart would not recognize that it's Mario Kart at all, and I think it's crazy that we live in a day and age where that exists. And it would be criminal for me to bring up jazz music without mentioning the most famous trait of jazz music, the lick. The lick is just a group of 7 notes in a particular manner, and although it's hard to pinpoint the first occurrence of the lick, it's been used in so many jazz songs that it's become known as a staple of jazz music. Obviously, the lick appears in many of the tracks from Mario Kart World, and I tried pointing out every single instance that I could hear from my first listen. They used the lick in DK Summit from Mario Kart Wii, Wild Woods from Mario Kart 8, Histocrat from Super Mario 3D World, and Toad Harbor from Mario Kart 8. which not only contains the standard jazz lick, but also what is known as the Mario Kart lick. If you're familiar with Mario Kart 8's music, I'm sure you've been waiting for me to mention this. The Mario Kart lick originates from Dolphin Shores from Mario Kart 8, and when Mario Kart 8 first released, this was one of the most well-known tracks in the game for how utterly jazzy it was. It put the game on the main stage for its jazz influence, and the crazy saxophone solo in the middle was so well known that it became known as the Mario Kart lick. And not only did they bring back this lick for the cover of Dolphin Shoals, but they also used it in the cover of Toad Harbor. And on the topic of utterly insane solos, I would just like to repeat the fact that every rearrangement has an insane solo like this. I think one of the most insane ones is the Fortress Boss cover from Super Mario Bros. 3. When I was listening to most of these tracks for the first time, I was just utterly speechless, jaw agape, at how they were able to fit these crazy solos in a Mario Kart game. Take a listen to my first live reaction to the cover of Ice Ice Outpost from Mario Kart 8. What? Alright, I'm nearly finished, so I'm just going to go through a few of these uncategorized ones. Ninja Hideaway from Mario Kart Tour is something I find interesting, because not only is this also very Japanese-centric, like Two Speed Falls, but the focus goes as far as using a pentatonic scale for the melody, aka a scale that only has 5 notes. This is something that a lot of ancient Japanese music did as well, so I really appreciate the authenticity. Twisted Mansion from Mario Kart 8 is an electro swing style, which is a genre that's so obscure that I can't believe they used it in Mario Kart. Sweet Sweet Canyon, also from Mario Kart 8, is in a lo-fi style, a genre of music that's relatively super new. This is something you would hear in those lo-fi beats study to videos, and the fact it's in Mario Kart really just goes to show the amount of diversity here. Daisy Circuit from Mario Kart Wii has a very interesting percussion section that bears a strong resemblance to something that I would hear in Italian music. Yoshi Desert from Mario Kart Super Circuit was originally a desert-like theme, and they decided to mix it with rock guitars and violins. They also did this with Swamp Desert from Mario Kart Wii, and it is absolutely divine. I'm starting to run out of adjectives to describe how amazing these covers are. DK's Jungle Parkway from Mario Kart 64 is possibly one of the least Mario Kart-like songs in the whole series. And in Mario Kart World, they turned it into this. It is basically unrecognizable. Water Park from Mario Kart 8 is in a mariachi style, and to be honest, I'd love to go to a water park if there was a live mariachi band playing there. And finally, just to settle down, let's have a listen to the Bossa Nova cover of Yoshi's on the Beach from Yoshi's Story. And thus marks the end of my Mario Kart World music journey. Again, this is far from every single song in the soundtrack, so I highly encourage you to take a listen to it yourself. Maybe you find some songs that you feel you could fit into your daily playlist. Although there's currently no way to hear these songs officially other than just hearing them pop up in game, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the YouTube channel We Plays for recording all these tracks in game and cleaning them up enough so you can listen to them without Mario screaming in your ear. Through listening to every single song in the soundtrack, which, might I remind you, is 10 hours long, so please don't do this in one sitting, I learned so much about this game's atmosphere and artistic approach through the music alone. From techno dubstep to bossa nova to everything in between, I think it's fair to say that Mario Kart World truly does strive to represent true worldwide diversity, not only in this music, but in its world design as well. After waiting 11 years for a new entry in my favorite video game series of all time, I couldn't be happier that the result is something that's just so unique and diverse. Despite this game's many flaws, I just can't help but appreciate the artistry shown off in the soundtrack, and this is a game that I will continue to play and cherish for many years to come because of that. Thanks for watching.